Welcome to Beatsource Tech. My name is Mojaxx and today we're looking at the latest addition to the Flex line of controllers from Pioneer DJ. And this one is for the pros. Let's start with the basics. The DDJ-FLX10 is the latest addition to Pioneer DJ's Flex line of controllers, which started with the Flex 6 and Flex 6 GT and was recently expanded with the lower priced Flex 4. What is this telling us? Well, it seems that the company now have two distinct controller ranges on the go. The Rev models with battle style layouts and effects controls, and the Flex range, which has a more CDJ and DJM or club type feel. If you think that's confusing, it's really not by comparison with a few years ago when Pioneer DJ would habitually release two entirely different versions of a largely identical controller, one for Rekordbox and one for Serato. Which was indeed the case with the two devices which the Flex 10 is ostensibly replacing, the DDJ-1000 and 1000 SRT. Released in 2018 and 2019 respectively, those two were indeed practically the same hardware with different software support. Looking at pricing, the Flex 10 is a little more expensive, running at just under $1,600 street price in the US. This is $300 more than the 1000 and $200 more than the SRT, which in these inflationary times seems to be quite reasonable to me. Yes, it sits in the premium price bracket for a controller, but compares well with equivalent devices from other manufacturers. I'll be honest, I was a little concerned when I realised there would just be one version of the Flex 10 for both Rekordbox and Serato. As annoying as that dual versions thing was, the truth is that both software platforms have their own quirks when it comes to layout, features and workflow, and that can lead to some compromises. The Flex 6 and Flex 6 GT are prime examples of that, thanks mostly to the lack of any hardware effects. Those are really quite disappointing when it comes to their Serato mappings. So let's make it quite clear here right from the start, whilst the screen printing gives away that the Flex 10 is clearly a Rekordbox first device, the Serato team have worked hard to make sure that users of their software don't feel shortchanged when using it. One big advantage they had with the Flex 10 was that it includes a serious suite of hardware effects built in, so software effects didn't need to be adapted. Pioneer DJ have always been some of the best in the game when it comes to hardware effects, and things are no different here. I'll give you a quick run through now. We have the regular sound color effects first of all. So these are very familiar to any Pioneer DJ users. We've got dub echo, we've got space, we've got crush, pitch, noise, and a combo filter. Then down here we have the beat effects. So we have low cut echo, where it just affects the mids and highs, which is my choice always. Regular echo, multi-tap delay, spiral, reverb, transform, Enigma jet, flanger, phaser, a new one called stretch, which I've yet to work out a great use for, but there's potential there. It's kind of emulating an old time stretching algorithm. Slip roll, regular roll, Mobius saw, and Mobius try. So as you can see, the hardware effects are great. There is more to them related to the stems workflows on here, which you'll see shortly. And indeed, let's move on to the big new feature set on the Flex 10, which is for the first time on any Pioneer DJ equipment based around stems. Rekordbox hasn't even had stems, or part separation as they call it, until now. And there's good news and bad news there. The good news is that the stems workflows they've developed are interesting and creative. The bad news is that the stem separation in Rekordbox itself is not great. It contains a lot of artifacts, there is a fair bit of bleed between stems, and it just isn't up to the standards set by Serato or Virtual DJ's 2.0 release, especially when it comes to vocals and drums. Here is a quick comparison. Keep in mind that this track has proven to be a challenge for all of the software I've put it through, but still the difference is pretty obvious.
You'll find the tempo that I be a shadow, and around we go, round we go. You'll find the tempo that I be a shadow, and around we go, round we go. In the little dress, I don't know how you fit it, with a strap in front and nothing in the back. In a little dress, I don't know how you fit it. With a strap in front and nothing in the back. Girl, you showed up and everyone here looked right at you. Cause it's obvious you're special from a glance. Girl, you showed up and everyone here looked right at you. Cause it's obvious you're special from a glance. I didn't tell you the little line you tell me you wanna dance. I didn't tell you the little line you tell me you wanna dance.
Pioneer DJ's official line is that they want their stems to be accessible to all users, and fair play to them, they do analyse quickly and don't seem too demanding on your computer. But my position is this: Serato's stems are, for me, just about good enough. Sometimes they are amazing, other times they don't quite cut it, depending on the track, but the hit rate overall has been solid enough to make the technology useful in my performances. And in the latest version of Serato DJ Pro, which is shipping with the Flex 10, Serato say they've actually improved their stems even further. I'll dig deeper into that another time. Whereas Rekordbox stems are, to my ears, roughly on a par with Algorithm's Neural Mix and Virtual DJ's first efforts, which simply weren't good enough for me to want to use. I'm sure existing Rekordbox users will be delighted to at least have some kind of stems in there at all, but I can't see anyone who's really keen on using stems not deciding to use Serato DJ Pro on the Flex 10 instead. So whilst they get points for at least taking the first steps down this road, Pioneer DJ need to get working on some serious improvements to their separation engine if they want to compete in this space long term. And that is a shame, because the ways that the Flex 10 can allow you to work with stems are actually very cool indeed. We're going to talk about stems because, of course, they are a massive feature here on the Flex 10. They're fairly similar workflows between Serato DJ Pro and Rekordbox, but not entirely the same. So I'm going to take you through both. We're going to start with Rekordbox. We can see this track has had its stems analysed because it has the little indicator inside the jog wheel. The most obvious way to work with your parts is with the 3 active part buttons at the top. So I can mute the vocal, mute the instrumental, and mute the drums. There is an option in Rekordbox to switch that to a solo mode, so if I hit vocal it will cut the other 2, but you can do 2 at once. So I don't think that's entirely necessary. Certainly I wouldn't bother with it because you have the ability to do multiples at the same time. What I love is the fact that you've got this jog wheel illumination telling you which parts are active. So if I go just to vocal, the jog wheel illumination goes green, red for instrumental, and blue for drums, and it combines them together. So if you have multiples, you get this kind of fade. So now we've got this kind of pinky purpley color because just those 2 are active. So I love that instant visual feedback, and it's really obvious at a glance, just looking at the controller, what's going on with those. So yeah, overall, that's very, very smooth indeed. No issues with that whatsoever. The next thing we can do is what Rekordbox call part instant doubles. It's a bit like stem split that we've seen in Serato DJ Pro elsewhere, but not quite the same. You have options again, being Rekordbox, you always have options, right? So in Rekordbox, you can choose. You can either do it across, so from this side over to the other side, and we could choose deck 2 or 4 to do it to. And that means you've got an extra deck perhaps free on this side. So if I'm playing something on number 2, I want to do the part instant doubles, I can do it to number 4. And that works fine. What you don't have then is the ability to do the dual deck mode, which you do if you're going up and down. So I would typically choose up and down as my stem split mode or my stem instant double mode in Rekordbox, and it's an option there in the settings. So I've chosen that here. But if you want dual deck control, you have to actually enable that. So we hold shift, press the deck select button. Now you can see the deck indicator is flashing. That tells us this side is in dual deck mode. So whatever I do with 1, the same will happen with 3. So let me change over to deck 3. And there's nothing loaded right now. I'm going to hold shift. I'm going to double tap vocal. And that has brought over the vocal from deck 1 over here. So now deck 3 has just the vocal on it. And deck 1 just has the instrumental. We can see visually again, if I switch over, we can see visually from the jog wheel, from the actual buttons. And this is in dual deck mode here because it is flashing there. So I can scratch them together, I can hit cues together, I can loop them together. So if I want them locked, which I often do when I'm doing this stem split kind of thing, then that's the way to do it, and it works really well. As I say, if you go left to right or right to left, you lose the ability to do that dual deck mode, but it does maybe free up another deck. It's just dependent on your personal choice, your personal workflow. Of course, if we want to then split these up and do something different with them, we just hold shift, take it out of dual deck mode. If I go to deck 1 or deck 3, then I've got the ability to do that. I can jump around in this one. Very, very smooth indeed. And if I'm coming back to deck 1 and I just want all my parts back, I'll just hit that button there and we are back to where we were. So it is a very advanced way of working. You kind of have to think about what you're doing, but I really like it. It's smooth on here, and say options are always good. Love having that. So there is more we can do with the parts though, and this is one reason you might not even want to do part instant doubles. You might not need to do it, because if you're just looking to add effects onto a particular part or stem on a track, you have the effects part select over here. So let me take off drums and instrumental. I'm assigned to deck 1 here, and let's do a low cut echo just on the vocal. Or let's do transform just on the vocal. Or I can do a roll on the drums and the instrumental. The vocal is unaffected and plays on. This is very, very powerful stuff. Indeed. And it doesn't just apply to the beat effects, it also applies to the sound color effects as well. So whatever I've put over here. So let's do dub echo just on the vocal. Or let's do a pitch just on the vocal, or just filter the vocal. So this is what I mean, like you have this ability, so you may not even need to do like the part instant doubles, the stem split stuff. If you're just looking to add effects to a certain part or a certain stem, you can do that here. The other thing with Rekordbox as well is that the pad effects, the way things are routed, this FX part select also works on the pad effects too. So hold that one down. Let's go back to where we've got some vocals. Flanging the vocal. So yeah, everything, all the effects on here are routed via the effects part select, which I think is very, very neat indeed. So that's most of the ways of working. But there is one more, because what we're seeing here is the ability to swap your EQ for ISO. So all we do, hold shift and press the Q button. You can do it on a per channel basis. So I'm now in part ISO mode, and this reflects what's up here. So drums on the bottom EQ, vocal on the mid EQ, and instrumental on the top. It's not my preferred way of working with stems. I like the ability to access EQ and stems at the same time, so I don't want to lose my EQ. But lots of people may be coming from other software, might be familiar with that way of working, they might prefer that way of working, and it does work incredibly smoothly. It gives you the ability to boost a bit as well. And I just love the fact it's so accessible. So turn it off now, we're back to regular EQ, shift Q, and it's there. And it flashes the Q button to tell you when you're using the part ISO mode. So again, you know it's there. So as soon as you touch that EQ, yeah, it's going, oh yeah, you're in that mode. So yeah, a fantastic addition to the lineup of stems features on here. Absolutely superb. As I said, the stems workflows in Serato DJ Pro are pretty similar. There's a couple of things of note though. Firstly, if you're coming from Serato DJ Pro already, you'll be thinking, where's my fourth stem? Well, in here we've got drums, vocal and instrumental, and that combines bass and melody together. So you only have 3 instead of 4. It all works the same up here. You have the color mixing on the jog wheel as well. And again, you can do 2 at once. You don't have the option to change to solo mode, but as I said, I'm not really fussed about that anyway, because you can do both at the same time. If you are missing that 4th stem, if you do some stuff with bass and melody separately, you can replace a pad mode as you do with other Serato DJ Pro hardware. So I've replaced loop roll there, and then we have all 4 stems accessible here, and you can see the jog wheel LEDs are also changing with that as well. So we still have access to separate bass and melody, and we have the stems effects controls down below, which I make a lot of use of in Serato DJ Pro. So yeah, that option is open to you if you need it. Otherwise, again, fairly similar when it comes to the effects. All the effects work with the effects part select, so I can do an echo just on the vocal. And here, just the echo tailing there on the vocal. And the same thing applies with the sound color effects as well. So they've routed that in much the same way as they have in Rekordbox. The only difference is there is a pad effects mode on here, which is great, but that applies to everything. The effects part select doesn't apply, so obviously the routing is slightly different within the controller. For Serato DJ Pro, these do affect the entire track. But otherwise, yeah, your FX part select, all good. When it comes to using the part instant doubles or stem instant doubles, there's one restriction: you cannot go completely on one side. So I can't double from deck 1 to deck 3 over here. There's no way to do that, so I can't make use of the dual deck mode, even though that is available as an option. Because I can't double that way, I can't use it. What I can do, it's a bit more convoluted, but I can send it across, so left to right or right to left on either deck. So I could send it to deck 4 over here. So I can do, let's put the level up, shift, double tap the vocal. Let's go back to a section where we've got vocal. Shift and double tap the vocal. And now that's done that. So we have instrumental over here, vocal over here. And because of instant double, they are automatically synced. But if I want to do the dual deck, I can do that now. I just go to deck 3 and it's flashing. So it is in dual deck mode. And I just do an instant double across. And now I can stop this one. Now we have this. And both decks are completely synced. So if you do want to do the dual deck mode splitting, yeah, that's an option for you. But you can also just send it left and right, and then they won't be completely synchronized together, but it might free up more decks for you. So overall, yeah, the stems workflows with Serato DJ Pro pretty much the same. The only other thing to mention is the stem EQ option. So hit that. The slightly weird thing here is they've chosen to put vocal on the top. As you can see, it's instrumental in the middle, drums at the bottom, and vocals at the top. So we take that out. So that is a slightly weird choice because it doesn't line up with everything else. You know, drums, vocal, instrumental, drums, instrumental, vocal. And there's nowhere to switch that in Serato DJ Pro. You do have the option to switch it in Rekordbox, but not here. But still, it works just as well. If you like the stem EQ way of working, it's easy to use on a per deck basis. Very simple, very straightforward.
At this point, it's time to talk hardware. Firstly, the construction style of the Flex 10 is largely in line with the DDJ-1000 and other earlier Pioneer DJ controllers. Some might not like the quite plasticky feel of the build, but it's a proven design style at this point, undoubtedly durable, and I like that the Flex 10 is pretty lightweight. At just under £15, it can comfortably be carried one-handed in a soft case by those DJs who go from gig to gig with their controller. It's also not crazy huge either. Pioneer DJ have squeezed a lot into the Flex 10's 28-inch wide body without making things too cramped.
The only thing I'm not a huge fan of when it comes to the design is the super shiny sections on the top panel. They look good at first, sure, but are absolute fingerprint and dust magnets, which can make the Flex 10 appear a little bit messier than it ought to if you aren't on top of keeping it clean. One thing which always drew people to the DDJ-1000 was the CDJ-sized jog wheels using mechanical, not capacitive technology, so the feel was much more like the club standard CDJs instead of other controllers. And thankfully, not only have those been carried over to the Flex 10, but they actually seem to have been improved a little. The responsiveness and feel is pretty close to the current flagship CDJ-3000s. Scratching and pitch bending on them feels very natural and comfortable. Pioneer DJ have used a similar platter edge design to that found on the Flex 6, which I can give or take. I don't think it looks quite as nice as the CDJ design, but it works just as well. And there's even a tension adjustment so users can dial in the exact amount of resistance they prefer. I distinctly remember when the DDJ-1000 dropped, just how impressive it was to see such large and high quality jog wheels in a controller of this kind of size, and at such a comparatively low price. And to be honest, I feel no less excited about seeing them on the Flex 10, a highlight of the device for sure. On a related note, the fader situation is great too. The up faders are standard long body types, but the crossfader is one of Pioneer DJ's Magville units, and it performs really well with a tight cut and short cut-in distance. It doesn't have the precise adjustability of one of the Magville Pro units on the company's battle mixers, but if you enjoy cutting things up, the Flex 10 will still absolutely do a great job. The full-length pitch faders are on point too, with no center click and a pitch reset button close at hand. That's generally my preferred setup, and the accuracy from them is great. Connections next. Master out is on balanced XLRs and unbalanced RCAs, plus there's a booth output on balanced jacks with its own level control. There are two mic inputs, one on a combo XLR and jack socket and another on jack only. They have separate level controls but shared 2-band EQ, and the preamps will be decent enough for most users. Overall, the mic section is solid, if unremarkable. Power is delivered by an external 12-volt power supply with a barrel connector. This is never my preference, I'd always rather see an internal power supply and an IEC connector, but it's understandable on a device of this size. There are two USB ports for connecting to computers, and things can be switched over on a per-channel basis. I'm delighted to see USB-C ports for both. As I keep saying, I know some people aren't fans of that, but I love it myself, and I'm glad Pioneer DJ are continuing to push the DJ market towards USB-C. It's been the standard in other technology fields like pro video for a long time now, and I don't see why DJing should lag behind. The outer two channels, 3 and 4, can be changed to external inputs via a pair of RCA sockets switchable between phono and line. This enables those channels to be used with DVS control, and I tested that on both software platforms and it worked great. When it comes to playing vinyl through it, I wasn't sure what to expect, as the phono preamps on the 1000 were okay but not exactly amazing. But having tested the Flex 10 with a couple of different cartridges, whilst I don't think the preamps are up there with, say, the company's A9 mixer, I'd be perfectly happy playing the odd vinyl set with it. One thing I will note, the beat and sound color effects work really well with external sources, and unlike the competition, Pioneer DJ do include automatic audio BPM detection even on devices of this nature, so beat synced effects on, say, your records won't involve endless tempo tapping. Much appreciated. The sound quality in general has been elevated over the previous generation. Some folks found the 1000 to be somewhat lacking in the sound stakes, and whilst I was fairly happy with it in context, there was definitely room for improvement, and that's been well executed here with some solid spec upgrades. As with the phono preamps, I don't think the Flex 10 will be challenging the A9 or even the OPUS-QUAD when it comes to overall audio fidelity, but the quality here is comfortably good enough for most professional situations where you'll be using such a device. When it comes to queuing, I'm largely happy. There are cue buttons for each channel, the master and the sampler, which has its own level control by the way. There's a cue master blend knob, and split queue is available, but only in the software, not with a hardware switch. This worked fine in Rekordbox, but was not functional in the beta version of Serato DJ Pro I was using, but as the option was there, I assume that will be fixed by launch. We'll talk displays now. As with the jog wheels in general, these are something of a highlight on the Flex 10. They are bright and clear with wide viewing angles, and the resolution is decent. With both platforms you have a plethora of different views available, all with differing styles and amounts of information. The playhead marker can be turned on or off at the push of a button, and there's even a cool pop-up view to show you what's happening with your selected pad mode. My favourite view with both Rekordbox and Serato is the one with the stacked waveforms, which look great. With Serato they are perhaps slightly less intuitive, as the bottom waveform only ever shows the deck's opposite number, 1 shows 2 and 3 shows 4. On Rekordbox the bottom waveform changes according to which deck you have selected on the other side, which makes more sense to me. The mappings in general were a pleasant surprise. Not for Rekordbox, obviously, the Flex 10 was designed around that and it would be a shock if the integration wasn't spot on. But I was really pleased at just how well Serato have mapped the unit. Pad modes line up almost perfectly with the markings, aside from loop roll replacing pad effects 2. There's hot cue and pitch play on mode 1, a new pad effects function and loop roll on mode 2, beat jump and auto loop on mode 3, and sampler and key shift on mode 4. It would have been nice to see scratch bank as an option, but otherwise I think Serato have done a great job in choosing the modes here. The same applies elsewhere on the controller, with all the buttons doing largely what they say they'll do in Serato. There's one notable exception, the mix point link controls, which adjust pitch up and down and enable or disable pitch and time. Frankly though, I think that's probably more useful to most than Rekordbox's new mix point link feature itself. The idea behind it has been around for a long time, most notably in Traktor and Virtual DJ's automation features. Basically, you can determine a point in the outgoing track from which the incoming track will automatically start playing, leaving your hands free to do stuff with stems, EQs, or indeed be working with another deck entirely. In theory, it's a cool feature, but the execution seems a little clunky, and I don't really see much of a benefit over just using sync in general. All it eliminates is one push of a play button, and it means you'll need to spend time making sure you have suitable cue points at the end of any tracks you want to use with it. I might well be missing something, but nobody at Pioneer DJ seems to have been able to explain it to me all that well either, so who knows. Right, so I'm going to try and demonstrate mix point link to you as best I can. Honestly, I don't think I completely understand it. Pioneer DJ didn't have a demo video to show me. I've got this from reading the manual. This is as far as I've kind of worked it out. I've got cue points towards the end of the track on the left deck, so that will be my mix point to go out. I've hit beat sync on both decks, so they are going to be in time, and obviously your beat grids will need to be correct. Let's try and set this up now. So let's choose, there's my cue, mix point link. So I'm jumping around on the bottom waveform E, that's where I want my mix point to be. So I'm going to hit link, and now in theory, if I get to this, let's beat jump through the track. Let's go there and then beat jump through. In theory now this should start. Link again to make sure it's not flashing. And off it goes. So it seems like it's quite easy to take it out of the mix link mode, and that's one of the parts I really don't understand. I mean, obviously now this is cool because I can EQ, I can do stem stuff with both. You know, I have options to work with. Like, I get the idea of it, absolutely I do. It's just quite complicated. And the fact that, you know, I spend a lot of my time messing around with new DJ tech, and I don't really understand how this works, that feels like a bit of a problem for me. I like the idea of this feature. I just think perhaps it's got a little bit of finessing in order to make it usable for your average kind of DJ. One final thing to discuss, the DDJ-FLX10 has a built-in DMX output with an XLR connector. This means you can connect directly to any DMX lighting rig and control it with Rekordbox lighting with no extra interface required. I have mixed feelings about this. The principle is fantastic, no doubt about it, but I spent quite a lot of time getting to know Rekordbox lighting a couple of years ago, and the truth is, it's no sound switch. I find the building of custom shows to be quite unintuitive, and the stock analysed shows based on phrase alone are somewhat underwhelming. But my biggest issue is that the software can literally only ever utilise the red, green and blue channels of any fixture you map to it. So all of those fancy hex LED uplights you have, totally wasted, as Rekordbox lighting will just turn them into basic RGB fixtures. And frankly, at this point in 2023, things have moved on when it comes to colour in lighting. At points, Rekordbox lighting has felt a bit like abandonware, as there weren't any real changes or upgrades for a long time. And so whilst the inclusion of it on the Flex 10 makes me optimistic that it is being worked on, Pioneer DJ have also discontinued the RB-DMX1 box, which means that at this point lighting is basically just an accessory mode for the Flex 10. I hope they open up the software to other DMX interfaces and start really pumping out upgrades, because the potential is there for something extremely cool, it just hasn't been quite realised yet. And in the meantime, let's just say that if the SoundSwitch team don't add the Flex 10 to their list of supported DMX interfaces immediately, then they're crazy, because that, when using the controller with Serato, would be absolutely killer. So there you go, my thoughts on the DDJ-FLX10 from Pioneer DJ. Overall, I think they've achieved what they set out to with this one. The whole thing on the previous generation of having two almost identical bits of hardware with different names that ran different software, that was just a bit silly. And yes, there will always be compromises when you're trying to get two software platforms onto one piece of hardware because the software is different. But what the Flex 10 has proved to me is that if the companies behind that hardware and software get together and work things out properly, then in fact those compromises can absolutely be minimized. And I think if you're a Rekordbox user, you'll love the Flex 10, and if you're a Serato DJ Pro user, you will also love the Flex 10 because yeah, there's very little to kind of hold it back with either platform. Yeah, there are some quirks here and there, but overall, yeah, it's a great experience with both bits of software. In general, I'm very impressed with it. You know, it retains that Pro feel. It's a very similar feeling device to the 1000 and the SRT. When it comes to the jog wheels, they're absolutely superb. You've got a great crossfader in there, hardware effects, so all that kind of stuff, which I absolutely love. And you've got all this stem stuff going on as well. Now, of course, yeah, Rekordbox stems right now, it's not really the one. When it comes to the quality, they are kind of a generation behind, and I hope they can change that and upgrade that pretty soon. But Serato stems keeps getting better and better, and whatever platform we're using, you know, the workflows for stems are just fantastic on here. So overall, yeah, it's a solid recommend from me, absolutely. Whether you're a Rekordbox or Serato DJ Pro user, you will find a lot to love in the DDJ-FLX10. In the comments this week, I'd love to hear from you about switching platforms. Did you use one software platform for a long time, then switch over to something else? Maybe you went from, you know, Engine to Serato, or maybe you went from Serato to Traktor, or maybe from Traktor to Rekordbox. Let us know what led you to make that switch and how you feel now that you've done it. Thank you for watching this episode of Beatsource Tech. I do hope you've enjoyed it or found it useful. If you have, please give the video a thumbs up and make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any future videos. I'll see you next time.